This video assumes you're someone who's already started their filmmaking journey and you're looking for ways to kind of improve and make your films and your videos a little bit better. And this is going to cover one of the most important things about exposure when it comes to skin tone and scenes. Now, I'm not going to cover the creative aspect because this is not a very black and white kind of situation. But more or less, this is like a fundamental rule you want to cover when you're doing like interviews, for example, or daytime interiors when it comes to exposing for darker skin. But a lot of the issues that I see with a lot of non-black cinematographers and even some black cinematographers as well is that exposing for dark skin is something that isn't done very well very often. And there are tools that you can use to help you do that. But also there are some reasons why some people may not know or may not understand how to expose for darker skin. And a lot of it has to do with lack of knowledge as well as just bias that has existed in the industry since its inception. Situations of not knowing how to expose darker skin has led to a lack of emphasis and knowledge on what accommodations you have to make to light for darker skin. So here are three reasons why it happens, because I'm also one of those type of people where I like to tell you why something happens and then provide solutions so that way we can avoid this in the future. One of the main reasons, one of the historical reasons that this happens is film stock and digital sensors were originally kind of calibrated for lighter skins. So lighter skin, white skin was the default at one point. Now, obviously, sensor technology has changed because of the fact that there's way more people who have access to film cameras and sensors. So things are a little bit different, but that was something that was an issue initially in Hollywood, and it did kind of linger for quite some time. If you look at the old film stock, the 8mm film stock from Kodak and stuff like that from back in the day, they struggled to really capture the full totality of darker skin, like the full range of it, and some of the exceptions had to be made during the processing part of the film negatives. They had to do different things. They had to expose differently because they realized that was a bigger problem. Also, a lot of DPs, even myself at one point, didn't really get a lot of that training. Even on online videos, it's not till recently a lot of those videos came out. On my personal channel a couple years ago, I touched upon it, and I think there's been a few YouTubers who have discussed it, going forward. But, in reality, there was just not enough training about exposing for darker skin, because often you see in these camera tests, they're usually someone of lighter skin or they're white. And that's just simply because it is just a touch easier to do so. Now that we know the reasoning why, the three reasons why on top of that, ultimately, let's kind of dive into what are the best ways to measure so that way we can get it consistently and accurately, so that way everything can be precise and accurate as possible. Now, the first thing I want to mention is a light meter. When you have a light meter, it should look something kind of like this, basically. So this is a light meter here. So basically what you will do is you can turn this around. Let's take the ball out like this, twist it out. This is gonna look like this. You turn it on, and then it's a Sekonic, a light meter. And basically this allows you to measure light. So I might be a little underexposed on myself right now because I don't really have a light setup. I'm using my second monitor as a light, but let's just get a reading. If I put this here, but first, let's be very clear when using a light meter. You have to put in your camera information, which I do have actually, 800, 172, shutter, 23976. Okay. But just be mindful, put in your camera information when you're using light meters so that way it can give you the most accurate information possible. I'm not going to dive too deep into light meters. Once again, I'm assuming you have some knowledge about this stuff going into this video. And then on other instances, I'll dive deeper into things like this so that way when you want to use it, you can use it, well and intelligently. So I have my information. Let's give it a little quick measure. So right now I'm getting a reading of about like a 287, 285. Let me do it one more time. Get under my glasses. Yes, I'm just getting a little more than a 2.8, it's still relatively close to a 4. So maybe I'm about maybe a third of a stop underexposed, which I kind of knew that already because like I said, I'm not using an actual light source, I'm using my monitor and I'm compensating for it in post. But basically when it gives you this number, this is the number that you're gonna put for your aperture on your lens. So let's just assume that it just said this is a F4, T4, whatever like that. Then once I make the light meter, once the light meter give me a reading of 4, then basically in order for my skin to be perfectly exposed, I would put it to a T4 in my lens or F4 in my lens, and basically my skin would be perfectly exposed according to the concept of middle gray or whatever that is, you know. But here's the thing. When it comes to darker skin, yes, that is technically perfect exposure, but in reality, in order to compensate for various forms of darker skin, typically or good habit is to expose either by half a stop or stop over maximum. That's usually what it is. So if I wanted to expose my skin a full stop over or half a stop, that usually will leave just enough latitude for you to have information still in your skin, just in case it moves into the shadows or whatever like that, or you have really dark skin. But also it helps so that way you have a little bit of latitude as well, so that we have a little more dynamic range within the skin too. Another way you can measure light is you can use something called an EL zone / false color as well. Now EL zone and false color are a little different, but it's something that some cameras come with. I think small HD monitors have EL zone specifically, and most cameras come with false color. My camera has false color. I also have a small HD monitor as well, which you can get EL zone if it's supported for that camera. Now, the thing about EL zone, if you look on your screen, is that EL zone kind of lets you know specifically what stop the skin is going to sit at. So usually, if you're looking at darker skin, if I were to put my skin on here or somebody else's skin from different footage or whatever the case may be, whatever I decide to do in post-production, you'll see that darker skin that's perfectly exposed, the same way it was exposed with the meter, sits around green. It'll show like basically one stop underexposed from middle gray, right? But then if you were to expose by half a stop or a full stop over from where darker skin is supposed to sit according to the chart, then you'll see that it'll probably have a little bit of yellow on the skin, which is perfectly normal. That means you slightly overexpose the skin just to give your skin a little more latitude. And that's how you can use something like EL zone. False color is a little different. Now, false color typically measures things based on camera settings, as well as how the camera determines what your skin is according to their color science and what codec you're using, all that stuff. So basically, if you're using, let's say Blackmagic Film Gen 5, and you're using their false color, for example, if you were to put the false color into, let's say, the camera, you can see it on the screen as well, you'll see well-exposed skin should sit around like that pinkish area, a little brighter, and that's usually where the skin is like perfectly exposed for that camera. And it'll be different for different cameras because they have different means of measuring their false color based on, let's say, Sony cameras like S-Log3 or something like that. It'll be a little different. But for the sake of that, once you understand your camera using false color, you can have perfect skin tone exposure. Now, here are some other things you have to consider when lighting for darker skin. Melanin and skin reflectivity. Now, darker skin, even though it does absorb more light, there is some reflective aspect of darker skin. Usually pigment that gives darker skinned people their color, melanin gives them their color, also does affect how it interacts with the skin itself. So for example, melanin-rich skin reflects light differently than lighter skin and has a high reflectivity in the red as well as in the infrared spectrum. So it can make the skin appear shinier or glossier by default. So that's something you have to take into account as well, which is why I said when you're measuring with your meter or your EL zone, your false color, do not expose your skin past that stop, like half a stop of measurement in terms of headroom latitude, because then you actually can clip the skin because of that reflectivity due to the infrared and how our skin reflects light. Also, number 2, skin surface and texture is really important as well. Darker skin typically has a smoother texture due to the more thicker, compact outer layer of skin that we have called the stratum corneum. I'm trying to make sure I say it properly, so I'm like looking off on the screen here. But that also enhances the smoothness of the skin, and basically with the more smooth the surface is, it's usually a little more reflective comparative to like other surfaces relative to it. And another thing you have to take in consideration as well, smoother surfaces on skin and well as melanated skin typically produces a little more sebum, which is basically just your body's natural oils. So darker skin, even though compared to whiter skin and darker skin, they don't make that much of a difference in terms of sebum, Darker skin just makes a little bit more, which you still have to take into consideration in general, because let's say the set is hot or it's getting hot in your room and you start sweating, the oil is going to release from your skin, and if you overexpose that part of the skin, it will clip, and you don't want anything to clip on your skin because you can't pull that information back. Now also, there's something I want a lot of people, whether you're black, whether you're white, if you're watching this video, that is really important when it comes to exposing. You have to take in consideration people's cultural background. Now for black folk, you already know we don't like to walk around ashy. We typically moisturize a lot. So we'll use a lot of coconut oils, a lot of really good oils like jojoba oil, something like that for our skin, shea butter, all that stuff. We'll use that to moisturize our skin to make sure it's not dry, but taking that into consideration, it will also cause the skin to be a little glossier than even if we didn't moisturize. Our skin is a little bit more reflective in general than people of fairer skin, but because we also moisturize on top of that, your skin can actually be more reflective because of that moisture that's adding to your natural sebum, which is also adding to the fact that our skin reflects light differently in the infrareds as well. So these are things you have to take in consideration when you're lighting for darker skin. I'm not going to get into too specific details on the perfect numbers, because there isn't a perfect number. It's all based on situation. It's situational basically. And once you kind of figure out what you need for that specific scene, especially if I'm assuming you're already someone who knows kind of what they're doing, you're just looking for that little extra oomph, well, here's your opportunity to use it. And it's information that isn't really publicly available to too many people. Often examples are given on lighter skin, and not too many examples are given on darker skin. So take this knowledge, try it out, experiment, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Peace.